Well, thanks and welcome to join me on Newsroom. I'm Kejang Henry Atembe in Douala, Cameroon. We are sorry, extremely sorry for the late start. In fact, Newsroom will peruse some of the topical issues that made news across Cameroon and the globe. But then, first things first, we begin with our headlines. The government of Cameroon bans the consortium of Anglophone civil society and the Southern Cameroon's National Council, the NCNC, arrest leaders and hunt for others. Newsroom keeps track as the Anglophone problems unfold.
It's terrible, honestly, what we are seeing now. Shooting us, to take us for what?
And as Barrister Agbo Felix Nkongo and Dr. Fontem Afotekra Niba remain behind bars, and as Wilfred Tassan and Barrister Bobda Harmony seek refuge in the U.S. diplomatic mission, we are asking on Newsroom today, who speaks for the Anglophones in Cameroon now?
We have filed the matter in the Constitutional Council, and the Constitutional Council has decided to be slowest on it. I am sure the next thing they will tell us is that their hands are tied.
Mancho BBC arrested. The coffin man who sparked the revolution in West Cameroon was picked up in Bamenda. Newsroom today is questioning, will the massive arrest and detention solve the prevailing crisis in the Anglophone Cameroons? This and more will constitute our package for today's edition of Newsroom. Welcome. This is Newsroom, reaching you live from our studios in Douala, Cameroon. Well, that was our headlines. We are happy to have Ellie Smith. Ellie Smith, welcome and thanks for joining me.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're expecting to Wendum Augustine, who is a journalist with Veritas Radio and Television Corporation, and of course, Mr. Njanji Constantine, who is a former journalist with the LTM Television, where we must be very precise here that fired just last week. Well, Ellie, you're a global affairs commentator. Ellie is a journalist with us here in Canada International Friday Group. Ellie, well, just to set the salvo as a teaser, Ellie, finally we are having Donald Trump as the president of the United States of America.
Exactly. I think all those who said they were well educated and they were manipulating the people have now discovered that the people have spoken. Donald Trump is just surfing on a global trend that wants that people are tired of professional politicians. They want a new crop of politicians around the world. If you look at what happened in Philippines with Duterte, if you look at what happened in Hungary with Viktor Orban, we might not like what Mr. Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is, but he has popular support. And we saw what happened in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, whereby the people decided against all opinion polls to vote for opt out of the European Union. And so Donald Trump also is one of those persons who is not a conformist politician, and that the media did not see him coming, and all those so-called educated elites did not also see him coming. So he is the 45th president of the United States, and we have to, whether we like it or not, we need to accept the reality and the democracy. Democracy is the power of the people.
And whether or not his reign will be short-lived, it might be one mandate, government. And again, finally, the ECOWAS is due on the neck of Yahya Jammeh, but they are probably being now prudent in the way they have to handle the issue.
Yes, they are prudent because they are trying to give peace a chance. They are trying to give peace a chance, and they are also trying to give dialogue a chance. They are giving Yaya Jammeh an opportunity. But ECOWAS has done something extraordinary, which is going to set a precedent. But it is happening in West Africa simply because West Africa has a democratic culture, unlike other sub-regions such as Central Africa. That's the reason why the leaders of the ECOWAS never wanted the type of change of heart that Yaya Jammeh did, because Yaya Jammeh organized an election, considered defeat, everybody was happy, but then congratulated him. He congratulated his opponent live on TV, but then came back and tried to resign the decision that he has taken is something uncalled for, and I commend the ECOWAS community for taking such a bold decision to drive away Yaya Jammeh from power. But while they want to drive him away from power, they should also allow or exhaust all avenue of dialogue which might avoid Gambia from having a kind of bloodbath, the kind that I think Yaya Jammeh wants.
And people are saying that, well, ECOWAS is probably not playing a game when it came to the fight against terrorism is part of this, part of the sub-region. But then when it comes to sending out or choosing out leaders who are tight-fisted, it becomes a champion now on that.
No, it's wrong. On the fight, the thing is that we Africans, we don't have the media power that Western media do have. We have to take into consideration that when the problem in Mali began, the countries that first intervened were the countries of the ECOWAS. But we also have to take into reality that the ECOWAS might not have the logistic capacity and the financial capacity to withstand the firepower that the terrorists of ACMI and the rest had when they invaded the north of Mali. ECOWAS did something. To say that ECOWAS did not do something is either we are ignorant or we are manifesting a kind of bad faith. Secondly, this is not going to be the first time that ECOWAS is trying to use its military wing, which is ECOMOG, to solve problems within the sub-region. We have two cases. We have the cases of Liberia, and we have the case of Sierra Leone. Ahmed Tijan Kaba was reinstalled in power thanks to ECOWAS. So if people are trying to claim that today ECOWAS wants to drive a leader out of power, and they are trying to say no, it is not a good thing, I think it's out of bad faith. They should, on the contrary, congratulate ECOWAS, because ECOWAS have this courage to say if a leader rigs the elections, if a leader abuses his own people, they have to intervene. It's something that we would have wanted to happen within the sub-region here, where Pierre Nkurunziza violated and is abusing Burundians every day, or where Denis Sassou Nguesso stole the elections and stayed there, or where Ali Bongo stole the elections. But the problem is, you cannot compare Central Africa with West Africa. In West Africa, the leaders have some moral high grounds. Buhari has a moral high ground. Macky Sall, Yusufu can do it. But in the Central African sub-region, Paul Biya cannot, Bongo cannot, Sassou cannot, or Nkurunziza. I think West Africa is a best setter, and we need to support West African forces and the West African region instead of deriding her.
Well, thanks very much, Eli Smith. Stay with me on the program. Well, thanks for us to meet Dominique Meme with our press review. When we come back, we are going to begin with our first debate for this edition of Newsroom.
The torture and the maltreatment of Anglophones in Cameroon caught both national and international attention this week. The government of Cameroon moves from dialogue to repressive measures to solve the Anglophone problem. To the Rambler newspaper, government stamps ban on the Cameroon Civil Society Consortium and the Southern Cameroon National Council SCNC. The ban to the paper is to weaken the activities of Anglophones from demanding for federalism as a system of governance. The paper goes beyond saying that the head of the ad hoc committee single-handedly signed and published a report demanding striking teachers to go back to work. The Scoop newspaper writes that even before the ban of the consortium, Anglophones continue to register successful ghost town operations in the northwest and the southwest, thereby sending a clear signal that Anglophones listen and believe more on the defunct consortium leaders than the government. Following the successes of ghost town in the Anglophone regions, the Scoop tells us that the president and secretary general of the consortium have been arrested and detained in Yaoundé. Barrister Felix Bala Kongo and Dr. Fontem Neba, the paper says, remain in detention despite calls for their release. As the Anglophones' emblematic leaders continue to stay in jail in Yaoundé, the Post newspaper writes that Barrister Bernard and Akirimuna are mobilizing other lawyers to defend Anglophone leaders under detention. As the Cameroon government continues to hunt for those to arrest, the Post newspaper equally writes that other union leaders, like Wilfred Tassan, Secretary General of CATO, have sought refuge in an embassy in Yaoundé. Government goes beyond beating, arrest, and intimidation, blocking internet connection in the northwest and the southwest. The population, the paper says, the option is to stop the posting of military atrocities committed in the Anglophone regions. La Nouvelle Expression writes that the banned consortium has now gone underground, operating in the diaspora, with calls for a weekly ghost town operation in the northwest and the southwest. At the international scene, the chairperson of the African Union Commission condemned the evolution of affairs in the country. Nkosazana Zuma called on the government to open more room for dialogue and shun violence. Away from the Anglophone problem, Diapason newspaper questions the honest use of 102 billion francs CFA for youth employment. Still concerning finances, L'aide du Sahel says economic transactions have re-established in the far north region of the country between Cameroon and the Nigeria. We end with La Nouvelle Expression saying that the Lions of Cameroon have their last chance to qualify for the African Cup of Nations quarterfinals by doing all to defeat Gabon this Sunday. The paper equally says Njie Clinton snubs Albert Roger Miller in the hotel after the victory over Guinea-Bissau.
Well, thanks very much, Mehmed Dominique. The government of Cameroon has banned the consortium of Anglophone Civil Society Organization and the Southern Cameroon's National Congress or Conference, the Council, rather, the SCNC. In fact, this ban came on the wave of unrest that is going on in the southwest and northwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. Another question is, will the arrest of these leaders be a final solution to the problem, or will it be more problem to the problem? Eli Smith Agbobala has been arrested, Dr. Fontem arrested, and there is news that there is a manhunt of the other leaders of the consortium. And presently, we got information, though still to confirm, that Wilfred Tassan of CATO is presently hiding in a diplomatic mission in Yaoundé, somebody who is supposed to be the one to lift the ban on the strike action that is presently going on. Now that he is at large, now that the leaders who are supposed to lift this ban are at large, is it going to be possible as a solution?
No, I think it's wrong. The government is just manifesting a characteristic bad faith. I think the first thing is, when you ban what they call a consortium, in the first place, why did you have to open dialogue with them? And on the other hand, when you are looking now for the Secretary General of CATO or TAC, it means that you are not willing to dialogue, which means that the contrary to the allegations that the spokesman of the government has been saying, opting to arrest the leaders of trade unions is just a clear indication that the government wasn't sincere when they pretended that they wanted to negotiate with them. The reasons being in advance are flimsy and baseless, and I think it is not going to solve the problem. To solve the problem, we need to sit on the table and negotiate. This is a national problem, and it's a problem that concerns the entire nation. It is not a problem that concerns an individual or a region of the country in particular, because the reasons why they went on strike was simply because saying it is not tantamount to subversion
or extremism,
saying it simply, the reason they went on strike was simply because for too long, and saying that, I will say it, For too long, the foundation of this country has been abused, and some people felt that it was time to correct a historic wrong. Arresting them now means that the government was not sincere.
Now, we equally know that, well, since there is a manhunt for these leaders, it becomes now a very big abuse. Certainly, there is a state of uncertainty whether or not schools will resume, because it is suspected or expected that these leaders should be the ones to call off the strike, and the government is probably using some marginalization to do that.
Yeah, but I think the problem with the government is that we have a government that is afraid, a government that is out of touch with the reality, with the realities on the ground, representatives from the government side, whom I think they are not really, they don't understand what they have to do, and I think they lack some linings of patriotism. If you arrest legitimate leaders of a movement, you are giving or opening an avenue for those you really call extremists to take over. Because when you do that, there are some people who will come up and will opt for something else. I think the government is making a mistake. The only solution in any crisis around the world is to dialogue, using power, using violence, using the tactics that has been put in place will not solve the problems. And there's one thing I think the government of this country has a kind of selective retention. If you could recall in 1992 or 1993, when they wanted to organize something called the tripartite summit, I think the idea of the government that has been ruling this country for 34 years has always been divide and rule. But they were surprised that instead of coming up with a divided front in West Cameroon, people came up with one common ground, and they met down in Boya and Bamenda to create what's called the Anglophone Cameroon movement. I think they have forgotten. Trying what they are trying to do is not going to succeed. If I were to advise the government of Cameroon, is that they should be humble enough, they should be willing to dialogue, but don't use that tactics that they are using. It's not going to work. And
if we look at the fact that people like Valesa, who were strong unionists at the time, could not be arrested, we're asking questions why you start haunting a legitimate body, because they say that they are probably afraid of diasporic influence. No,
the problem, there's something in Cameroon. You know, one thing with the Cameroonian government is that the Cameroonian government is the only government in the world that thinks that whatever thing it does is perfect. Whereas we are human beings, and human beings by nature we are imperfect beings. If you want to arrest a trade union leader, it's not going to solve the problem. You have just given the example of the guy of Poland. We have the case the case of Steve Biko in South Africa. You know, when you start arresting such people, I think the government is wrong. The government is showing that they have exhausted all avenues that they had. They are also showing that they were not ready to dialogue. It is a country, it is not a military regime, or maybe I'm wrong, it is not a dictatorship, and under a democracy as we think we are in, people are free to express their will openly without fear of being arrested. Arresting trade unions, arresting lawyers. We know what happened here, where lawyers, human rights lawyers, were beaten and humiliated by the security forces, and none of those security forces have yet been prosecuted. Now going to arrest people who are defending their rights shows simply that it is a government that is not willing to dialogue, and it is not going to solve the problem, and it is not going to help school to resume. On the contrary, it is going to be a long struggle. It happened in 1993, and we know what happened after. It has happened in 2016. I think when next it happens again, it is not going to be this way.
Now, give the dog, or tell the dog that you have rabies, and then you kill it. Now, but let me ask you a question, Smith. Is it, when we see we ban these groups like all Anglophone, the consortium of Anglophone, civil society, and the SCNC. Leave SCNC aside. The consortium negotiated with the government the consortium is just like a spiritual body where ideologies converged, and the government decided to chart a way forward with these bodies. Now the government is saying that it is banning the consortium, which is something like illusion, imaginary. Where do we stand when you look at what the actions of the government at this point?
To say again, I think the government is just being, doesn't have anything to, they don't have nothing to put on the table. The government thinks that it's by using force, brutal force, that is going to solve the problems. The government is now, when you ban the consortium, it simply means that when you invited them on the table of a negotiation, you felt that they had to respond to your whims and caprices. And when they did not respond to it, you decided to use brutal force. It's not going to work. It is a spiritual movement, and we have also discovered that the leaders have been arrested. Immediately they have been replaced, which means that there is a movement that is going on that it will not be broken by brutal force. It is only going to be stopped when there is sincere dialogue, and that when the primary or the underlying reasons why these problems flared up is addressed. If it is not addressed, it is not going to be solved. And now to claim that they want to cut the influence of the diaspora into what is going on is also a futile fight, because you have to ask your questions, this question: why is it that we have a large pool of our diaspora out of the country? That is a great question, and therefore two reasons. One is because of the mismanagement of this country by the regime of Paul Biya for 34 years, where people don't have jobs, the mismanagement of everything. And the other thing is also because of this wanton arrest of people. Some people go out because they are afraid to be arrested or prosecuted. Others go out simply because in Cameroon they will not have any job. The only job this government has been able to, this government that has ruined this country, and because this government took this, Cameroon was an intermediate economy. Now it is a poor and highly indebted country. And then you think it's progress. No, there's no job in this country. That's the reason why the diaspora is going. And that's the reason why the diaspora is going to continue helping and supplying and supporting whatever thing is going on. If you don't want the diaspora to take part, try to run your country properly. Try to create jobs. If there are no jobs for people, if you don't want to dialogue, then you should expect what is happening. So banning the consortium, banning the Southern Cameroon National Council is not going to solve any problem. Now, the solution is dialogue and dialogue and dialogue.
The release or the order banning these organizations or movements, put it this way, tagged them semi-terrorist organization. Very, very appalling there. The secession. Now let me ask you, Eli, this word secession, this word extremist, this word fundamentalist, is it anything wrong with it?
Well, yeah, there are things wrong with it. If you are characterized as a fundamentalist, now I want to know what type of fundamentalist you are.
Good.
Are you a Christian fundamentalist or a Muslim fundamentalist? Now, if you say you're an extremist, you're extremist for what? Now, secession, well, it depends. In a democracy, people are allowed to express themselves on every opinion. You cannot arrest somebody simply under the ground that he has an opinion. No, you can be arrested if the law, if you have defied the law in any way. So they think that characterizing people or name calling organizations and people is not going to solve the problems in Cameroon. Cameroon has a problem. And to say that Cameroon doesn't have a problem is a lie. There is a problem that began in Cameroon in 1966, I think 65 or 66. Why did Anglophone leave as the vice president and prime minister of West Cameroon and was unilaterally replaced by Solomon Tandemuna, who was not elected in Southern Cameroon's parliament? There are a number of things. This country is a country that is built on a foundation of lies and saying that we need to go on to a negotiating table to rectify or correct historic wrong is not tantamount to secession, is not in any way, by any length of interpretation, synonymous to secession. Is just simply that people want things to be corrected. And if you don't want it to be corrected the right way, there are many options on the table to be used, or that can be used to correct wrongs.
Well, let's go and meet Calvin Tekam, who is producing today's edition of the program Newsroom, to have this report on the consortium of Anglophones, civil society, in fact, the arrest of the leaders of the consortium. When we come back, we will continue with our discussion. The president of the consortium of Anglophone civil society, Barrister Agbo Felix Nkongo, and the Secretary General, Dr. Fontemniba, have been arrested. They were arrested yesterday in Buea by security forces after a press release read on the CRTV banning the activities of the consortium and the Southern Cameroon's National Conference, the SCNC. The consortium retaliated by publishing its own release transforming the operations of the consortium to Europe. Reading between the lines of the release, it is clear that the leaders of the consortium had prophesied the arrest. The arrest come after ongoing talks to solve the crisis collapsed. Sporadic riot punctuated the towns of Buea, Ekona, Muyuka, and some villages in the Fako division following the arrest of the two consortium leaders. In line with the ongoing crisis, the diplomatic corps has met with the Minister of External Relations for a lasting solution to the problem. In the meantime, schools remain closed in the English-speaking part of the country. Oh, thanks very much. Welcome to join me. This is Newsroom. I'm Kejang Henry Atimbe, and of course, we're still expecting two other guests on the program. Ellie Smith, you got the news on the arrest of Bala and Dr. Fontem. The others, Abangma, are probably on the run. Well, for what reason we don't know. Now, free schools of thought. There was this question of reunification with the Cameroun, with La République, unification with Nigeria, and cessation. That is to say, stay on your own.
The third option.
Third option. But then this word of the third option seemed to be very disturbing in the minds of some people. And now it starts like terrorism.
Well, I think the government of Cameroon, once again, is naive and it is afraid. The problem, there's something I would give two examples. You know, in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, you have a country called Scotland. I think the Scottish and the English are today united for, if my calculations are not wrong, for almost 356 or 57 years. But yet, the people of Scotland almost always wants to have their independence, and nobody has arrested anybody in Scotland because he or she is expressing his view to quit the United Kingdom. That is the reason why a forth-thinking person called Tony Blair came and brought what was called devolution of power, whereby the Scots, the Northern Irish, the Welsh had some kind of limited autonomy. Then we have to leave the United Kingdom and go to the North America. In North America, you have a country called Canada. And within the Canada, you have the French-speaking province of Quebec. And the Quebecois have a movement called Bloc Québécois. The Bloc Québécois, on two occasions, wanted a referendum to secede from Canada. And fortunately, the no vote won, and nothing happened. If you go to Spain, you have the people of Catalonia who want their independence. So I think the people of the government of Yaoundé are a group of people who are out of touch with the reality. The thing is, someone who wants to secede, no matter what you do, he will go. I will give you another example. if you go to Southern Sudan, Nimeri made a lot of noise, and where is Southern Sudan today? In Ethiopia, in 1963, when Emperor Haile Selassie decided to end the federal nature of Eritrea, it sparked the revolution, and in 1993, Eritrea became what it is. The problem in Cameroon, saying it's not that we are trying to put fuel on fire, is to try to speak the truth. The truth is that in this union we have been cheated. And in 1961, there were two options, whereas some people felt that they would have had a third option. That third option never came. But now when the people of West Cameroon or Southern Cameroons opted for unification and independence with La République du Cameroun, there were an agreement was signed. But that agreement was never ratified in the Southern Cameroon's assembly. But that notwithstanding, the people of Southern Cameroons continued. But they have discovered that the union between two states has been trampled upon, and the nail on the coffin came in 1984 when the appellation of the country was removed. It was changed. It no longer became the United Republic of Cameroon. It became the Republic of Cameroon, reminding the people of Southern Cameroons what they were. I think saying that is not wrong, and I think there is intellectual bad faith from a number of people, especially some government officials and some Francophones elite. There is also some dose of ignorance that they don't want people to say the truth. The truth is that two countries came together. The truth is also that another one has been cheated in the union, and that is the reason why people are clamoring for change. And now if you have a number of people who are clamoring for rectification or correction, and you opt to arrest them thinking that is going to solve the problem, I bet you are lying. It's not going to solve the problem. It is never and will never solve the problem until we sit down and talk about the truth of this country.
Diplomatic mission met with the Minister of External Relations or Foreign Affairs, and it tells you or speaks volumes of the seriousness of the problem. But to that extent, even after the diplomatic mission met with the government pursued or went ahead to orchestrate the arrest of these leaders. Now the question is, you have arrested them, you've banned the movement, and the Anglophones are asking, is it now a way of saying that the Anglophones should no more speak in this country? Again, is who has to speak for the Anglophones, knowing very well that the leaders or the elites who have been rejected by these very people, subjugated people, don't want or will be played a game for themselves?
Yeah, those people who parade who masquerade in Yaoundé as our elites are not the elites of the people of Southern Cameroons. Because if they were the elites of the people of Southern Cameroons, people of Southern Cameroon would have respected them. Now, if the government thinks that they are going to arrest every Anglophone who voices a different opinion from that which they want to impose on everyone, then they are going to arrest everybody. And I think it's not going to work that way. The reality is that there is a problem in this country, and that the problem is that Anglophones have been cheated in the union. And I think the icing on the cake was that you will not take people who do not know how to express themselves in English and then you send them to Anglophone regions to go and teach or to go and practice the law system there. And I think it's from October 16th last year that I think the government of Cameroon discovered that there is a problem in that part of the country. And I think they are playing with fire. What they have to do, the people of the government of Cameroon must know how to do what they call crisis management. You don't have to arrest leaders. You have to speak with them. And then there's another person that was arrested, this guy called Mancho BBC. Mancho BBC is a radio guy. I think he's a host or presenter of a radio program in Bamenda. But the problem of that gentleman is not a problem that is peculiar to Bamenda. It is a problem of mismanagement. It's a problem of unemployment. The problems of absence of basic utilities in the Bamenda, you will find it in Douala, you will find it in Victoria, you will find it in Yaoundé. So arresting him means that you are going to arrest about 16 or 20 million Cameroonians. I think the Cameroonian government are shooting themselves on the foot. They are giving themselves a bad name. It is going to make people consider or reconsider the position of the government of Cameroon and look at the government of Cameroon not as a democracy, but as a dictatorship. And I think it's something that the government of Cameroon doesn't want it, or it is out of ignorance. You have to understand that we are human beings. I think they are afraid and they are manifesting some kind of immaturity. But I think if I were the government of Cameroon, I'm going to free all those arrested and then come onto the negotiating table and ask the question, what is going on? How can we solve the problems the problem that is in West Cameroon today? If it is not solved, you will not solve it by arresting people.
The government says it's going to give them a fair trial.
It's going to give them a fair trial before you arrest them and then decide.
Though they will be tried under the terrorism law as it was propounded.
But they are not terrorists. The real terrorists are in the far north called the Boko Haram. You cannot come and arrest somebody who is a lawyer. Are you trying to tell me that somebody like Tassang is a terrorist? Are you trying to tell me that Barrister Bala or Dr. Fontaine? No, they are not terrorists. You see, that law, we knew that it was in preparation. It was a kind of preparing the ground for what they were planning to do. That is, try to arrest anybody that has a divergent view. But I don't think they're going to have any fair trial. The good thing for the government of Cameroon is that free those people and then come to the negotiating table and try to seek a solution.
Well, the banning of the movement, a consortium of Anglophone civil society and the SCNC, most especially the SCNC, will probably mean redefining the school curriculum. What do I mean by that? Maybe the history of Cameroons, especially Cameroons west of the Mungo, will not be taught correctly or the way it is written. It means that probably they will have to extract words like SCNC from our history. Fumban Constitutional Conference, Muna, Foncha, Ahijo.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't understand why this guy even went as far as mentioning Southern Cameroon National Council, which means that the Southern Cameroon National Council is really a force to reckon with. I think, one, I think I'll be repeating myself a lot. The government of Cameroon, I really don't understand until the underlying problems that is affecting all Anglophones are entirely or partly addressed. You will always have such organizations. Banning them doesn't solve the problems. Arresting their leader will not solve the problem. The solution lies in just dialogue, to try to dialogue. You will not arrest a lawyer and say he's going to have a fair trial. It's not going to solve the problem. And it's not by arresting the head of a teachers' trade union that you think schools are going to resume. Schools are not going to resume simply because you have a kind of rudderless ship right now. And I think arresting people with whom you can dialogue, you open an avenue for extremists, the real ones, to emerge. And that is when it is going to be tough for the government of Cameroon. And I want to say this thing abundantly clear. There are some arrogant, ignorant individuals who think that you can use military or brutal force to quell a movement of the scope that is happening in West Cameroon today. West Cameroon is not the far north, and the movement is not synonymous with that of the Boko Haram that is affecting Nigeria, Chad, and the greater north of Cameroon. This is a nativist movement which has its origin because of the lies, the failure to respect the constitution or the foundation of this country that was created in 1961.
Well, Ellie Smith, thanks very much. Stay with me on the program. Now, let me take you to the genesis of, we'll meet Cavante, to move to the genesis of these crises, where it all began with the simple call for a translated version of a document. And here we are today. It has taken another twist. Now, let us go back to a report that we did in the year 2016, precisely on the 12th of November, to know how it started. When we come back, we will continue with our debate. Lawyers of English expression in Cameroon are requesting the translated version of the Ohada Uniform Act. Barrister Roland Abeng is championing this cause.
It's unacceptable that despite the dispositions of our constitution, despite our laws, in the 21st century, we are in a position where we have to beg for legal texts to be translated.
55 years after reunification, it has dawned on the Anglophone lawyers, many of whom have lost clients, to bring this issue to the forefront.
OHADA has done the laws in French. Our government is supposed to make OHADA understand that these texts, according to our constitution, are not applicable until they are published in both languages. Don't forget that OHADA is 4 different languages. You have the English, you have English, French, you have Portuguese, and you have Spanish. In Guinea-Bissau and in Equatorial Guinea, they use the text already in their languages, translated by their national governments. Cameroon government has simply refused to translate OHADA text from French to English.
Far from being politically motivated, Barrister Abeng thinks it is the right of all lawyers to have the translated version of the OHADA text. Other countries under the OHADA umbrella have done so.
My French speaking colleagues are better placed than me because they have the text in the language in which they practice. What of the lawyers in Bamenda, Boya, Kumba, Mamfe? They need this text in the language they use every day. That's the first thing. It's not only practice. We are talking of Vision 2035. Investors come into this country every day and you cannot give them text in English. Investors coming from Britain, from the US, you talk about OHADA law and you cannot give them the text in the language they can read. You tell them that it's under translation. What excuse you are? This is Cameroon. That's it. So it also has an impact on our investments. What about our children in the University of Boya? Obamenda. You punish them. And it affects the language, the English that we speak.
Conscious of this legal shortcoming, the president of the Bar Council, Barrister Nye Kamga, wrote to the Minister of Justice and Keeper of the Seal and to the Secretary General of the Ministry of Justice, who is the president of the OHADA Commission in Cameroon. According to sources from the Bar Council, the call seemed to have fallen on deaf ears. The planned press conference, which the lawyers will hold on October 1, would be to express the necessity. Well, thanks very much. Welcome to join me. That was a report that we conducted in the month of October, and Ellis Smith, you followed the report. Reaction?
Yes, my reaction is that when I watch
Barrister
Abeng, and I think he's a kind of guide or a kind of spiritual leader of this consciousness that if the wave is going through West Cameroon. Because what he has said is very important. It is really a shame for Cameroon, a big shame that we parade all over the world to claim that we are a bilingual country, and then administrative documents are simply monolingual. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not surprised, because there's one book I like to cite here every time. It was written by the governor of East Cameroon. His name is Pierre Mesmer. He was the governor of East Cameroon and the governor of Algeria. The title of the book is in French, Les Blancs s'en vont. I've forgotten the page. There is a way he wrote that Cameroon has become a bilingual country with official language, with French and English as official languages, with French and English, but French as an official language, is something that speaks volume on the mentality of those who are governing Cameroon. And the problem is that you have to look at the origin of East Cameroon. East Cameroon is governed by impostors. For example, the father of the nationalism of East Cameroon is not Amadou Ahidjo, it is André Marimbida. Simply because André Marimbida was not acting like a stooge to the French, he was sidelined and his vice became the president of East Cameroon. And how do you expect impostors who usurp the title of nationalists to govern properly? No, because the problem, Anglophones can get angry, but the problem lies in East Cameroon because the UPC, that would have been the nationalist party that had as program independence and unification, were sidelined to have people who dance at the whims and caprices of France. And the big stooge was called Amadou Ahidjo. And I think the foundation of this problem of Cameroon lies in one man. He's called Amadou Ahidjo because he is the one who decided to destroy the foundation of this country. But where I feel saddened is that we have one journalist here called Binji Anani Rabie. He said something once at STV that Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon, prior to 1972, had about 10 police reports whereby Paul Biya was against the end of the federal system. But I find it appalling and disheartening today that he is at the head of this country. Instead of correcting a historic wrong, he is instead trying to consolidate it. Because if, for example, people might say, well, why are Anglophones are bothering themselves? When you go to Ethiopia, in Ethiopia, for example, an investor who comes to Ethiopia with documents, if it is not translated in the Amharic language, you will not do anything in Ethiopia. When you go to Quebec, Canada, where most Cameroonians like to parade around and say we are the only two countries in the world bilingual, Canada and Cameroon, in the province of Quebec, if you cannot speak French, if you cannot speak French, you will not do anything in that province. So I think what has happened for 55 years is that I think it's also the fault of us Anglophones. We have been too complacent. We have always been saying that don't worry, it's going to work.
But the elites are the ones doing that. In fact, some of the elites.
Yes, because the problem with most of the elites are that they are not legitimate elites. They were just co-opted. So why do you expect somebody who never won an election, who was there because they rigged an election,
because he had some money?
Or because he was appointed. So the thing is that it is a time for what I call a kind of Joshua generation in Anglophone Cameroon. We have had the Moses generation, for those who know the Bible. Now we are having what is called a Joshua generation. I think the Anglophones should be assertive, should insist that all official documents in this country must be translated into English. Do you think that is a nice thing that you have the Minister of Defense who goes down to Manowo Bay and speaks only in French? Do you think that is normal that the police academy in Mutengene, they speak in French? Do you think that is normal that at the War College in Cameroon, they teach only in French? Do you think that everything in this country should only be written in French and then Anglophones could keep on accepting? No. And asking that all official documents should be translated into English is not tantamount to calling for, it's not criminal, it's not calling for the division of this country, even though you have the right to ask for a division. It's just like a marriage. In a marriage, if you feel that your wife or your husband is no longer what you want, you can quit. But I think that...
Would you call a wife who wants to quit an extremist, a secessionist?
No, you will not. So I think that all those things that the government of Cameroon is doing, it is wrong.
The document has been translated in French, rather into English, and the copies were handed to the Bar Council president.
Yeah, but I think you should not stop there. You have other documents that, for example, the CEMAC laws, all those things of the CEMAC, all must be translated into English. If it's not, what I think the Anglophones have to do this time around is that if I'm working in an administration, you give me a document in French, I will send it back to the sender. So he has to translate it into English so that we can do it. It should not be this one-way traffic whereby only the Anglophone. So sometimes when you go to the golf course at Likumba, you look at the holes. Likumba, that is in Tico. They write it in French. Those things have to stop. And then Anglophones should stop those things of thinking that they have just to be subservient. What this lawyer Abeng did was a very good thing. I think it's time for Anglophones to be assertive and ask that the language should be respected in this country. And asking for that doesn't mean that one wants secession. We just want the respect of the basic laws of this country, which states clearly that two countries, not one, two countries united to form what is called United Republic of Cameroon or Federal Republic of Cameroon, whatever. You cannot come and tell me this trash, this intellectual dishonesty in thinking that we don't have two Cameroons. Those who think that there's no two Cameroon, let them speak to me in German. Why do they speak in French, for Christ's sake? There are two Cameroons that came together in 1961. It's simply because one part has been hoodwinked for too long that we are having what is going on, and it has to stop.
Thanks very much, Eli. We are still moving back to the genesis of this crisis. Kevin Tekam would take us to back in the year 2016 and to meet, to get this report on how it happened. And if there was timely intervention, I think we will not have been where we are today. When we come back, we'll continue with something different. Buya, the chief town of the southwest region, was heavily militarized as lawyers of common law practice were about to take to the street on November 10, 2016, in consonance with a strike action called by the common law lawyers. After Bamenda, common law lawyers drifted to Buya for the strike action. They came from Meme, Faku and Kekupe Mwaninguba to protest. And as they were poised to converge at the appeal court to begin their protest, their action was punctured by heavily armed police officers posted in strategic junctions of the town of Buya. A group of lawyers were hemmed around Great Sopo in front of OIC by police officers on board a mobile van. They were beaten up with cops and their wigs and gowns seized.
The corporation was militarized. On coming back here, the police van, which was contained about 200 police officers, heavily armed, seized our wig and gowns. So I don't know if they have been going to law offices to seize people's wig and gowns. The law is very clear. They are not supposed to come to law offices. We are not criminals. We are fighting for our rights. We are fighting for this thing.
We want to express.
So Buya now is a military state.
The strike action by lawyers going on.
It's going on. Is it not the strike action going on like this?
It's going on. No lawyers.
That's why you see us fit and proper. We are formally dressed. We came for this police today, and they have been using intimidation. They have intimidated the lawyers. Our wig and gowns have been seized from us. They are coming to the law offices. It is bad. It is condemnable. It is unacceptable.
The lawyers were seriously beaten before the naked eyes of onlookers. They have promised to continue with their strike action despite what they called tyranny, repression, and militarization. Lawyers from Limbe and Tico were blocked around Mile 14 Dibamba from joining their colleagues in Buya. Serious checking of passengers by a combined network of security operatives was conspicuous as they were out to fish for lawyers even in public transport. And at press time, there were reports that lawyers in Muyuka marched without any police brutality.
We are here because we are angry. We can't be treated like this. This is a peaceful demonstration. We were told over to go, and we can't be treated like this.
No, we were doing a peaceful strike, and it went through successfully. We don't know what happened at the end of the strike. I mean, we could see tear gas being burst in the air for nothing. I don't understand.
It's terrible, honestly. It's terrible. This was a peaceful manifestation. But what we are seeing now, shooting us, the tear gas is for what? We'll discuss after. Thank you. We want to make it very clear. that many other civil society organizations have indicated their support of our action, our peaceful action. CATU is particularly mentioned here with TAC, the Taxi Drivers Union, the Professional Drivers Union, and we thank them immensely for it. And I will not stop from saying that the entire public of this country, even our Francophone colleagues, they have given us their commendation for making sure that the country does not die from a heart attack because of a blood clot. The blood started clotting, and we decided now to take children aspirin, which is this street demonstration.
Eli.
Yes, sir.
That was Harmony closing it up there, and you saw that was the genesis of all this. If that would have been solved by the Minister of Justice, I think we would have been where we are, like we said.
Yeah, I think I will not be abusing if I apportion the blames of all what is happening today to two individuals, the Minister of Higher Education, Professor Fame Ndongo, and the Minister of Justice. In this particular case, the problem with the Minister of Justice is that you need to look at his body language, his composure. He seems to think that he's a kind of demigod. I think he underestimated the resolve of the Anglophone lawyers, and here we are today. This thing happened last year, and it is extending today. It simply shows that the Minister of Justice was not proactive. He was instead condescending, because I watched an interview that he granted to a sister TV station. So I think the person that has the responsibilities of what is going on today, as far as the lawyers are concerned, is the Laurent Esso, and as far as the teachers are concerned, it is Mr. Fame Ndongo. Because if those two some were people who were humble enough and knew and they were proactive, we would not have been where we are today. But I also think that they neglected the movement. They felt that it was one of those other movements that we have. They could corrupt. That is on this other side of the Mongo, that you buy the leaders willy-nilly. But it did not happen in that other side of Cameroon, simply because there is a problem, and you just need there is a kind of long simmering problems, and then you just need one mismanagement, as those two some did. If we were in a serious country, I think those two individuals would have been shown the door. But since they think that they are so influential, they are so powerful, and they can always gang up and invent stories, that's where we are today. But it is a pity that Cameroon is going down the drain, and that Cameroon is showing a spectacle of desolation around the world as a country that doesn't permit people to express themselves openly and independently.
Well, thanks very much, Eli. We are going to move to our second discussion for the day, which has a direct connotation with what has been going on. In fact, according to the government, the diasporic community is responsible for organizing protests using social media platforms. Access to the internet blocked to all the social media sites, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Viber, that is in the West Cameroon. In fact, the consortium actually published an alternative internet facility. But then the question is, will this still be another problem? Censorship, which is certainly going to frustrate people the more. I would like to have our own Veric Caventekam to take us back to what we did some time ago, Bandolo. There was a newsroom that we did, Bandolo, made a certain reaction on why the social media must not be curtailed from the people. When we come back, we will continue with that discussion. Let's watch.
This stone is going to bounce back to it forcefully. You cannot stop this young generation that we have from communicating. And if they think that is going to control the social media, that will solve the problem. No, let them solve the problem. The social media is not the cause of our problems. And so they should not go and say people should not communicate or use the social media. To me, it's as we say, these are the kind of negative impact when we start having contact with people like Vladimir Putin, China. They start giving this kind of negative ideas to our leaders. Because I'm sure that is not coming from America. It's coming from Russia, from China.
Yeah.
Really? Those China, for your information, China and Russia are supporting all dictators in Africa.
No, that's not true.
Just,
China,
no,
China,
not
China and Africa,
China,
whether you like it or not, I'll talk like in the position of an
economic sense,
whether you like it or not, China and Russia creates the best impact. They've changed the lives of Africans more than any other country in the world.
Good.
You like it or not, it's the fact. Figures speak for themselves. Without China, Africa will be going right down. Whether you like it or not, what we need to do is to regulate.
But with all due respect, China economically has savaged Africa. I can agree with you. But when it comes to democracy...
And what do you want? Do you want the economy to be boom?
No.
When the economy is good, you forget about politics.
We need our
when you can have job, you forget about politics.
Our freedom.
What does freedom mean when you cannot move, when you cannot travel?
We need our freedom first.
Well, immediately after the arrest of the leaders of the consortium, internet facilities blocked Ellie Smith. This is another way of censoring the people you got, Bandolo. And this program, we did it sometime again last year. So we were really like prophets. Now, internet facilities blocked in the west of Cameroon. Well, I say west, I mean West Cameroon, as it's affectionately called. Now, this is another way of telling the people that you don't have to communicate because they say it is a diasporic contamination.
Yeah, I think somewhere around at the beginning of this program, we said there is no way the diaspora cannot participate in everything that takes part in their country. Well, so I think the government wants to be selective. When we want their money, the remittance from Western Union and MoneyGram, we want them. But you don't want them to participate in the political life of the country. I think the government is trying to be selective. The diaspora hasn't gotten anything to do in what is going on. This thing is an intrinsic, it began here simply because of the injustices that is going on. And to support what Bandolo was saying is that you have two very dangerous countries around the world. And that's the reason why I don't just like to hear Mr. Trump say one good word about Putin, because you have two despots around the world, two countries that are helping dictatorial regimes around the world. You have China and you have Russia. And there is another thing. They have a company called Huawei. This company is I'm not the one saying it. There is a book written by Dick Morrison. The title is Armageddon. This company, Huawei, has been banned in the United States a number of times. Do you know why?
No.
Simply because Huawei helps countries like Iran to track down dissidents. And now when you start banning internet, as Cameroon is doing, I felt that this thing cannot happen in Cameroon. I felt that it is going to happen in the Republic of Congo. It's going to happen in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in Burundi.
And this is the first time the government is doing that.
Yeah, but it's not going to solve the problem. Now there's one petty lesson I would like to give to people of Southern Cameroon. If you have a phone, this is a phone, you go to Play Store, you have to download a software called FireChat. When you download the FireChat, your phone becomes like a mini emitter. If you have a number of people with the FireChat application, you can now circumvent the ban. It is a pity. But I think that it is not a good thing for the government of Cameroon to act that way. If you go to the United States, have you seen the way people treat Barack Obama, or the way people treat Donald Trump, or the way people treat the United States? But the United States has not gone the extra mile to ban the use of social media. And trying to ban the use of social media is also inconvenient economically. There are people who do business using the internet. Now, when you ban it, as you ban it in Southern Cameroon, I think it is something which is uncalled for. It only supports what I have always thought, that this is not a democracy, it is a dictatorship. But we are going to roll it back, because no one can stop a wave from continuing. The government doesn't have to resort to such systems, and I see why the government loves dictatorial regimes such as the government of China. They are helping them, and then you have companies that are trying to help them to track down people who are using social media. It is a pity for the government of Cameroon.
Will you be surprised to hear that, well, the finance law did not meet up with its expectation because internet facilities have been censored in West Cameroon?
Sure. I don't know how the government is even going to compensate companies like what they call those internet providers, Orange, Nextel, MTN, and you name them, because it is not good for them. It is not also good for the images of these companies, because these companies are now moving against the will of the people. And I think it's something bad, and it's not good for the image of this country. The government of Cameroon, I think we are human beings have said, they should be humble enough and try to solve the problems. Banning the internet in West Cameroon shows that we are in a dictatorial regime. A government, a system that doesn't entertain contrary views is a government that is not worth labeling as a democracy. And what is happening in West Cameroon today shows that we are, and then you have the banning, the suspension of internet facilities or communications, the wanton arrest of everybody who has a contrary views to that being dictated from Yaoundé. It has to stop. It is not good for the image of Cameroon. We are going back to the days of the 70s, and which doesn't augur well for the image of this country. And it's not going to stop anything, to be sincere. And they should also stop accusing the diaspora. The diaspora hasn't gotten anything to do with what is going on. A lazy craftsman always quarrels with his tools. So that is the problem with the government of this country.
Well, thanks very much, Eli. We have a short transition. When we come back, we take our last discussion for the day. Welcome back. This is Newsroom. I'm Kejang Henry in Douala. Well, the National Communications Council, in another move to preempt Cameroonians west of the Mungo, not only Cameroonians west of the Mungo, at least Cameroonians in general, from making contributions to the ongoing crisis, has taken some move. I'm talking about the National Communications Council. Its President Peter Isoka has published a release which is similarly hanging like the sword of Damocles on the neck of media practitioners. And the release is now being interpreted by some as stifling press freedom in Cameroon. Isaac Ndi, popularly called across Cameroon as Awilo, and Constantine Janji, alias Wams, were fired from LTM television. And it is reported that the Minister of Communications gave instruction to the boss of LTM television, Dinali or Beth Moha, to fire them. Ellie Smith, now it is like the journalists will not talk again. Canada has been warned, Equinox Television, STV, La Nouvelle Expression, Le Messager, The Guardian Post, and maybe 2 other media outfits. It means that press freedom is finally stifled.
Yes, it's under threat. It was coming. We saw it coming. Well, I find it is a pity for a respected colleague such as Peter Isoka to be the person taking such a decision. I can understand. He's a servant of the state. He's working for an institution. But as pressmen and women, we are not going to be impressed by those mere threats.
They tell us report objectively. We don't understand how objective we should report on these.
Yeah, the thing
because
is...
Because if there's a crisis, we should say there's a crisis.
Yeah.
We have all been calling for a dialogue. So is it something more than that?
Well, I think the government is overwhelmed, hence they are reacting that way. Perhaps the government wanted us to take every bit and pieces of the propaganda stunt from the Minister of Communications as valid truth. But as journalists, if you are raping women, students, as the police did in Boya, you have to report it. As a journalist, when it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead. when it bleeds, it leads. So we are doing our job, and I think it's a mistake on their part, but reasons will prevail, and they will find that what is going on, they made a mistake. And I find it appalling and disheartening on the part of the directress of LTM Television to fire two of her brilliant journalists, Awilo and Wam. So it's a pity, because those guys were doing their job, and it simply shows that the state wants to take control over everything. And that's the reason why there are many people in that government who love people like Vladimirovich Putin. Because in Russia, people who love Putin, in Russia you cannot express any views contrary to the Tsar of Moscow. But what is happening in Cameroon is uncalled for. But I think that the government of Cameroon is going to exercise restraint, and they are going to see reason and will stop this wave of wanting to repress freedom and wanting to ban the press in this country. It is not going to happen. I think, I don't know how they want us to cover this event. Do they want us that if something is taking place in Victoria, you don't report about it? Do they want us that if something is happening in Bamenda, you don't report about it, and you say something contrary to the reality? No, as pressmen and women, we think that we have to report objectively, and that is what we are doing. I think if the National Communication Council felt at any point that there were some professional shortcomings, I think they would have maybe told us that we expected you, or we would have expected you to report this way or that way, but you report only this way. But I think we have been professional, we have been balanced, and we have given the opinions of everybody. And above all else, we have always called for dialogue, and that is what we have been calling here. We will not, under any circumstances, encourage or support violence by any stretch of interpretation, and we will not also encourage the government to carry out wanton arrests or any form of abuses as we have seen. But I want to ask you a question. I don't know what happened to those policemen who raped a girl at the University of Boya. What has happened to them?
That is just rhetoric anyway from you. Now, Ellie, it reminds me it reminds me of the 90s when a group of journalists at the time, we could always speak of the Cameroon radio, television, when they published the book The Prison Graduate. I'm talking about Temfak Ofegi and Mo Herbert. And you know what happened during the pro-democracy era, where had people like George Tani and Imbom Monjo Beatrice, Dr. Tata Menta, you have the Sonny Frank Kemleke, the Moses, etc. They were arrested at that time, and democracy or whatever saw the light of the day. But what a contrast, 1990 till the year 2017, 26 years after. Yeah, it means we are probably going down the drain.
Yeah, we are trying to roll back, but I think that there are things you cannot stop. It's like a wave that you cannot stop. You can use all sorts of stratagems, but it is not going to stop what is going on. Those colleagues you mentioned were really role models then. They were bold enough, and because of the sacrifices that they did, this country became what it became. And I think we are also people moving on their footsteps, and we have to be courageous enough, but we also have to be professional and objective in the way we are doing things. And as journalists, we have to denounce human rights abuses, we have to denounce corruption, and all the ills that this government has excelled better than any other thing, which is corruption, human rights abuses, and things like that. So I think, anyway, what I think is that the government is just simply afraid. They don't know what to do. And their manifestation is that of a person who lacks the options and thinks that the only way to act is to act like a bully. And bullies, we know the end of bullies. So, but I think the government of Cameroon will see reason, as I said, and then we'll come back to reality. And these companies that are supporting them in cutting communications, I think something has to be done to them, and they need to justify why they are doing what they are doing. But as I've said, we have other methods to circumvent any such bans, which I think I have already provided, and I think other people know it already. But it's a pity that we want to come back to the 90s, but it's something that's not going to happen.
Even before the 90s. Well, Ellie, thanks very much for having been part of the program News Room today with me. Thanks to Roland, to Calvin, and to Jean. Well, Ellie, let me ask you a question before we leave.
Yes, sir.
Do you know, have you read the book Prisoner Without a Crime?
No, I've heard about it, but I've not read it.
Abel Boko.
Yeah. Abel Mukong. That is a guy that I really love. Abel Mukong wrote A Prisoner Without a Crime, yes.
Because he was, in fact, the only crime he committed was to talk against the government.
Yeah, because he knows.
Or to say what he saw, which was not correct.
Which was not correct then, because he just said what is happening today, because Albert Mukong was criticizing the injustices that Anglophones have undergone since unification. And you see, you can arrest everybody in West Cameroon. You can do whatever thing you wish to do until that injustices, that feeling of being cheated is addressed. If it is not addressed, we will always have what we are currently having. We had it in 1993. We are now having it between 2016 and 2017. Arrest everybody you wish to arrest. If you don't solve the problems, in 2030,
you will keep arresting.
It is going to come again. So I think the government has to be humble enough, open her arms sincerely for dialogue, and not in a kind of they cherry pick what they want to. You don't go on the negotiation table and then you start to cherry pick. No, you have to be open, humble. This is Cameroon. We are all Cameroonians. There is no person who is more Cameroonian than the other. So I think the government needs to see reason, and that if the government really wants school to resume, they should free all those that have been arrested and be really open and humble for dialogue.
Thanks very much, Ellie Smith. Thanks to you, televiewers, for having been part of this program. My name is Kejan Henry Atembia. I leave you in the company of programs on Canal The English. From all of us, it's goodbye from me.